Hey everyone. Today's video is going to be another parenting video and a pretty specific one. Today's video is titled Thieving for Love, and this is talking a little bit about why children might steal from the people that they love or those that love them. So let's get into it. First, I want to put some parameters around this video because I want to be clear about what I'm not talking about. So I'm not talking about adults. This is going to be oriented entirely towards children. I am not talking about children stealing from a store or a random person, a neighbor, anything like that. I really am talking specifically about children stealing from their caregivers and stealing typically from the home that they exist in. When it comes to a child stealing from their caregivers, stealing from a loved one, there's typically four reasons that that happens. Now, there's a few more that I'll list at the end, but I've worked in the field for a little while and these are the ones that I see most. So this is going to be a combination of the research on the topic and my experience, and we're going to kind of put them together, and I'm going to go through these four reasons that children might steal from people that they love, one of which is going to be more of a material reason, and then three of them are going to be purely psychological reasons, these psychosocial reasons, trauma-based, interpersonal, things like that. So let's get into it. The number one reason that children might steal, and maybe this is a bit obvious, but it's insufficiency, it's need. They take what they need. They need food, they will take it. So if a caregiver is not giving them enough food, they will steal some. Or if they perceive they're not getting enough food, they will take some. If they don't feel like they have enough blankets at night, they may take it from someone else's room, a sibling's or a parent's, and maybe an uncle that's living in the house. If they don't feel like they are getting what they need to survive comfortably, then they will steal. And that I don't typically consider a psychological reason, it's just a material one. We all will do what we need to survive with some degree of comfort. So that's not psychological necessarily, that's just taking what they need. So that's the reason number one. But now the rest of these we'll get into a little bit more, and these are going to be the sort of psychological, interpersonal, relational reasons that they may thieve from someone in their home, from a caregiver, from a loved one. In my experience, the number one reason that children steal from a loved one is, based on the title of this video, for love. It's for attention, it's for affection, and it's for attachment. Attention, affection, attachment. Those are the three biggest things. Pretty much anything to do with children, those are going to be the big three. They want your attention, they want to attach to you, they want you, or the primary caregiver, they want a foundation, a strong foundational base that they can attached to that helps them feel calm, that helps them manage their emotions, that helps them work through the troubles of life, especially early when things are very scary and overwhelming. If a child is stealing from you, or if you know of a child that is going through this sort of stealing behavior, taking things from the home, maybe it's valuable, maybe it's completely useless. And that's kind of the funny thing, is that it really just depends on the kid. Sometimes they will steal things more valuable if they think it'll get a greater reaction. Sometimes they will steal something that's just noticeable. So, the kid will take the toothbrush rather than the diamond ring because the ring is sitting in a box that might not get open for a month, really doesn't get them the attention that they want. They'll steal the toothbrush, something like that. But a lot of times they're thieving for love. They want affection, they want attachment, and they don't feel like they're getting enough. And that's not to say that the caregiver's not giving them enough. It's kind of a weird thing. It's really just the perception of the child. A lot of these cases I'm talking about, a foster parent is going to be involved. I worked in CMH, so I worked in community mental health, and I worked in the home-based program. A lot of my clients were in the foster system. So when I'm talking about youth stealing, I'm not even talking about youth that you raised. This may be a new youth to the home. You may be a foster parent inviting a new youth in and things start to go missing and you're wondering why. So these will still apply whether it is a foster child, whether it's your biological child, whether it's a niece, a nephew, anyone that's in your home that you are to some degree tasked with taking care of, or someone an adult is tasked with taking care of this youth. This is where these will apply. So just to reiterate, attention. They are going to want to take things so that they can get attention. And look, kids do not care if the attention is positive or negative. This is something that adults really struggle to understand, and I have found myself explaining until I'm blue in the face. It doesn't matter. For adults, we may care. We may discern between positive and negative attention. I want positive attention from my partner. I will do this to get positive attention. I certainly won't do these to get negative attention because that makes me feel bad and weird and all this stuff. Kids aren't thinking about that. They are in a scarcity mindset. And attention is what will make them feel the best. They don't care what form it comes through. It will get eyes on them, and that will make them feel seen. It will make them feel attended to. And even if it's negative, a lot of these kids that are in the foster care system, all they really know is negative attention. So they will get it however they can get it. Being able to understand that positive or negative doesn't often matter to the child, they really just want attention at all. I think it softens up a lot of these parents. I think it gives them a pause and it makes them think really in terms of what the child is feeling, how hurt they must be that even being yelled at is better than being ignored. That's typically the most common one that I see is thieving for love, thieving for affection. After that, the second most common that I've seen in my experience, and research doesn't often rank these in like why, I think, because that's not really the way that research is done. It's usually like population level. So they're talking more like what demographics are stealing, what age is stealing, what gender. I don't care about that really. I'm focused on the individual. And so this is more about in terms of like what I see the most often. I'm just kind of ranking in terms of what I've seen in my experience in the field. And more seasoned clinicians might have a different opinion. And if you do, leave it in the comments, please. I would love to learn. But number three on our list, but the second most common psychological reason that children might steal is resentment. And this is not just in this isn't just typical resentment in terms of like they're getting back at you, although that is part of it. I think that's the umbrella is resentment. So if they have something that they feel like they need to, like they have a score to settle, then they will steal in terms of leveling the playing field, in terms of making things even or just punishing. A lot of these kids have learned that punishment is the way to navigate conflict. And so they will just punish. It's all they've seen. They haven't seen calm conversation. They haven't seen patience. They will just go right to punishment. And so if they're upset with you that you took something from them or that you limited their access to TV after a certain time, or, they got in trouble at school and they just need to kind of take it out on someone, then they may steal in terms of a targeted action towards a specific individual. Actually, this can get a little bit built into the attention thing. I am thinking specifically of a client that stole so that it would spark a conversation because he was upset that his relationship with an aunt that lived in the house wasn't where he wanted it to be. He felt like he didn't get enough attention, they didn't talk as much, and he was aware that he did that he sort of actually put the tension in the relationship through some trauma-based behaviors that he had engaged in the past, and just in the tension, in the confusion, in the hurt, in the desire to get that person back in front of them so they can heal that relationship, he stole something very valuable, very important. And of course, if you're an adult and you have hindsight and you have critical thinking, you're thinking, well, that's ridiculous. You're just going to hurt the relationship more. But the kid is not thinking that. They're often not really thinking these things through at all. That's being a child. That's especially being a traumatized child. So he stole because he was upset at them for the relationship not being where he wanted. Of course, he was upset at himself too. So it was a little bit of a projection in that resentment. He was really kind of spreading it around and just didn't know what to do, stole so that it could spark that conversation. So he was going for both attention and resentment, kind of work those together. This could also be if it's a sibling. If one youth feels like another youth, another foster child in the house or another sibling, if they feel like that sibling is being mean to them or taking too much of that attention, scarcity mindset, if they feel like someone has wronged them in some way, then maybe they will steal to get back at them. In psychology and in counseling, we think in terms of themes. And so in this case, I would say to the parent, like this child is trying to steal that positive attention away from the other child and get it directed at them. Of course, like I've said before, they're not doing that really intelligently. They're not doing that with a great grand scheme and design or, critical thinking about causation. They're just doing what they think will work, what their body tells them to do, and whatever impulse arises in their mind. They may act out of resentment to try to draw some energy away from the sibling, maybe get that attention and kind of bring it back around. So mind the resentment. Try to consider what relationships in the house are maybe on edge, what maybe needs some work. And is the child upset with someone, or are they upset at a concept that surrounds a specific person? Are they resentful that mom went back to work? that mom used to have all this time for them, and then mom went back to work, and now they're trying to steal some of that back by, you know, taking that, by taking something that was important to mom. So resentment may be a piece when we think about why the child is stealing from the home. So the third psychological reason, fourth overall reason that a child might steal from the home or from a caregiver is object obsession. For the previous two, we were talking very interpersonally. So the child wants attention, it wants affection, it wants to settle a score, it wants to make its resentments known, it needs to be heard, it needs to be seen. That's all about the way the child feels inside and how they feel in relation to others and what they expect from the caregivers in the home. This last one I actually see most often in youth that have autism or severe obsessional, very rigid, hyper-focused mentalities. Basically, the youth just gets really obsessed with the object. So I had a youth that was stealing jewelry. I had another that was stealing coins. And it actually wasn't the monetary value, it was that they just really liked them. They liked having variety of coins. They liked getting coins from all over the world. Their parents were great at getting them for them. The other one, it was just like we liked the shininess. He liked to make new jewelry, so it was almost like tearing apart old pieces of jewelry to put back together. It was object obsession, and in that case, they weren't really stealing maliciously. I mean, I wouldn't really consider any of the prior ones malicious either, to be honest. I don't think a child can be that malicious in what they do, but especially when we're talking about stealing in a psychological pain sort of way, it's not malicious. But especially this one, it's not even interpersonal. They just want that thing really bad. And I get that. I think a lot of us as adults can understand that. And so they're not finding a good way to stop those obsessional thoughts. They're not finding a good way to sort of expand their horizons. And so they become very narrowly focused on that object or theme of objects, category of objects. And so they'll take it. And this one actually is probably the easiest to treat or to kind of navigate through because you just find more effective ways for them to get those. So instead of stealing them, they can do a chore for them, they can give you a hug for them, whatever it is, they can just find more positive ways of getting that. And really, that's the way to get through all of these. So, one of the things that I do when I have these youth that are stealing, I made this recommendation to another colleague recently, actually, which is to take these, what I call them are like attention tokens. And I made these really roughly. I just drew them up really quick and printed them out. I will make a much nicer version one day. I'm sure maybe I can get a graphic designer to help me out. But I have these attention tokens, and these attention tokens are redeemable at any time. Basically, the caregiver can't say no. And I know that's a lot to expect from a caregiver, but this is how we treat pain. We have to give a little more. We have to do a little extra. We have to pay a little bit more attention. So I have these attention tokens, and if the youth is really having issues just asking for attention, then we'll just give the youth a stack and they can ask for them anytime. And my tokens have a few options so it doesn't feel too complex. These are very young clients, and so less than 10 sometimes. And so we give them the attention tokens. They have a stack. They can just check what they want, hand it to a caregiver, and get that attention in a positive way. Or what I recommended to my colleague is that she could have the parents hide them in the places where the kid is likely to steal, so that it's sort of a reminder to the child, like, oh, I actually went here to steal something, but I can just nicely ask for attention. This is doing two things. It's teaching them how to communicate for what they need, and it's a stepping stone. Eventually, they will just be able to verbalize what they need or walk up and just take a hug when they need it. So it's teaching them to communicate what they need, and it's teaching them to know what they need. And that's important too. So instead of having all these really intense feelings and these swirling things moving us around and being a youth and not really knowing what to do or how we feel or what we want, we can remember that, oh, that core, that like discomfort in me, that can be solved. I can go to a caregiver, I can get attention, I can get love, I can tell a story, I can get a little spotlight on me for a little minute that will make me feel that much better. And that's where healing comes from. That's what I can grow from. That's what I can repeatedly use to get my needs met. So those are the main reasons. Just to rattle off a few more, thrill seeking. This is more common in older, so they will just steal because it's exciting. Usually like late teenagers will kind of do this. It's not as common. Sometimes they'll steal because it's like, my friend just got his license. We're going to go driving around. I need $10 to go to McDonald's, I'm gonna steal. Things like that can happen. There's also boundary testing. This is really common in children that are new to the home, so especially foster care situations. This is just them kind of testing out what they can get away with. Who knows where they were at before, what their experience was like growing up. They've landed at your doorstep now, and they are new to this environment. And so, just like they've seen adults in their life before, possibly, they're going to test a boundary. They're going to see what they can get away with. Importantly, they're going to see how you respond after they steal. Are you going to freak out? Are you going to make them feel really bad? Are you going to let it go? Are you going to ignore it? Because you should address it, but it's how you address it is the important thing. And that's what they're trying to figure out. They're doing data collection as far as what boundaries they can test, how far, things like that. Another possibility is addiction. And this is again in typically older kids. So they're stealing because, you know, parents have cannabis somewhere in their room and the youth is addicted and really trying to soothe the way that they're feeling inside. And so they steal because they need that. It's a bit like object obsession, but it's more like addiction and not like a deep, thematic obsession, and more just like, I need this thing to get rid of the way that I feel. The last thing would be peer pressure. And this is, I actually don't see this super common. I guess it's just not something that kids do often, is like to tell their friend to steal from their parents. But I've seen it and it happens. You could really, peer pressure could be a reason for all sorts of actions that children engage in at the end of the day. So it's not something that we should ignore. But when we're thinking about why a child might steal from us, we really should just go through those main four things: insufficiency, attention and attachment, resentment, and object obsession. Once we've gone through those four and had a calm conversation, maybe talked to a professional, maybe brought in an aunt, just had a conversation with the youth. When you've talked these things out and you really don't think it's any of those four, then maybe go into some other options or ask for professional help and maybe we can tease out what's actually going on. But in my experience, those have been the main four things. Those are the main reasons that children might steal from a caregiver, might take from the home that they are living in. And maybe I gave you a little bit of a start on how you can manage that, how you can intervene upon that behavior to get it to stop, and most importantly, to get that child to feel comfortable enough with you that they don't steal. And I know it's hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of vigilance and a lot of love and a lot of patience, but that's parenting. So thanks for watching today, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and we'll see you next week.